This is the Night Wolf howling at you, and today we're going to take a look at the Masters of the Universe, Stondar, the heroic leader of the Comet Warriors figure, a Mattel Creations exclusive figure in its collector-friendly packaging. So if we turn the box around, we just get a nice full blast artwork here showing Stondar Rakan, and I believe that's Granita was her name, fighting against Horde members, I would say. Actually, not really sure who Stondar is fighting against. Probably another possible new character. And I am wondering if we might actually get Granita made in this line or not. Super 7 did make her for their run at the Classics when they were doing them. But let's go ahead and open this sucker up, shall we? Ooh, so difficult. I do like the artwork on the front here, too. This guy does not want to stay standing at all. Let's go ahead and take a look at his comic. The Destroyer of Worlds, featuring all of our characters there, and apparently a mechanical shark. I feel like they gave him kind of ape-like proportions here. Azoria is a planet, but a parsec away from Etheria, a mesmerizing world that abides by peace, pacifism, and natural order. But lo, for those with envious eyes, the virtue of peace is seen only as weakness. As the cosmic wind stirred the streets of the planet's cities, all stopped to stare skyward, where, like a noose, an orbital armada approached, helmed by none other than Evil Lyn. Okay, this thing went from looking like a shark to kind of looking like a duck. Finally, no longer will I be under Skeletor's thumb, and it's all thanks to you, Stondar. With the help of the evil meteorbs, I kidnapped you before casting a spell of psycho-coercion, making you my slave. You've got one gift that makes you the most precious rock being of all, the power to control your own kind. As read in the MOTU 1986 newspaper strip, Day of the Comet. You know, they released a collection of those a long time ago, and it didn't last very long. With an armada of asteroids at my command, the galaxy shall be mine. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of Spikeheart, the Geolins search for their missing companion. All day we've been looking for Father Rakan. Yes, granted, and still no luck. Making planetfall, the heroic meteororbs have arrived. Geolins, Stondar is in grave danger. Worse, his powers hold our star system hostage. Wasting no time, the Geolins and meteororbs took to the stars. They dare assault the Sorcerer Supreme. Annihilate them. Now, Stondar! An epic battle ensues between the evil and heroic meteororbs. All the rock formations at his command, Stondar freezes his ex-allies in space. Cast them into the fiery furnace of the searing sun! Evil Lyn made a grave error, ignoring the oath of Geolins. Under no circumstances may a rock parent endanger their child. Her transgression awaked Stondar from his psychosis. Peace is our way, not war. Out of my mind! Father, remember who you are. I didn't know they were his kids. It's over, Evil Lyn. I don't need you. With this battle cruiser, I shall roam and terrorize the stars. Leaving no quarters for the wicked, Stondar sets the starship's coordinates into the nearest star. And so, back on their homeland of Spikeheart, heroes enjoy a well-earned respite. I owe you much gratitude. If it weren't for your intervention, I'd be forever trapped under Evil Lyn's curse. My powers would have enabled her to conquer entire galaxies. I was used as the ultimate tool of evil. I may be your father, but I am also humbled. Thank you. No one is above being deceived. That's why we need friends and family to shine the light of truth. As the sun sets on Etheria, loved ones turn a bad day into a great one worth remembering. Seriously? I did not know that they were supposed to be his kids. So let's take a look at our Stondar here. Again, very difficult to get this guy to stand up. And of course now it works fine. So his one accessory is his gun thingy, much like Stondar's design. The only unfortunate thing with this is that they didn't do the chrome coating that the original toy had. And of course you can stick this in his chest here, making it quite possibly one of the most inappropriate weapons ever. Or you can put it in his hand if you can move everything around to do so. Like so. Now, before we go on with articulation and gimmicks here, I want to take a look at his face. While his face does seem like it matches his original toy quite a bit, it feels somehow lacking to me. Like, I don't know. The detailing, I guess. Maybe part of it is that they didn't color in his pupils at all. Or anything else, but something just doesn't feel right to me with this one. But what do you guys think of that? Articulation wise, though, the head is on a ball joint and can spin around. We can look way down because of that hinge there, which is part of his gimmick. But other than that, there's not a whole lot that you can do with his head. We can spin 360 here. And we can pop out his arm as we try to lift it up. Again, this is probably more because of the stone coating on this figure, so to speak. Single joint in the elbow. There is a spin at the wrist, which we did earlier to do the gun. And he does have in and out articulation on the wrist also. But he is really hard to move that wrist, right? We can do a 360 spin at the waist. He does still pop in half. Basically, though, the only figure you're probably going to switch parts with this guy with would actually be Rock-On. Which in itself isn't necessarily a bad thing either. But honestly, a lot of the joints are closer to the female joints on this figure than they are with the male joints. So even if you do decide to replace bodies, you're probably going to have to use the female characters. Unless, of course, again, you use Rock-On. He can kick really high, though. I think that has a lot to do with the design here of the crotch piece. So he can kick really high, although that's also for transformation. And he can kick back just a little bit. We do have a joint in the knee here. However, much like with the arm at the top, there's not much you can do with it because of the additional parts here. It's very hard. Although maybe that's just... Yeah, it's just... You can kind of see over here a little bit better. It's just trying to bend that knee is very difficult because of the additional parts. We still have a boot cut here, which is nice, and actually will probably be needed for transformation. We do have a hinge at the bottom of the foot and a pin so that we can spin it a little bit. So now let's look at his gimmick here, where we can kind of close him up into his rock formation, which, as you might recall from when we did Rock-On a while ago, it's not really great. And of course, one of the problems with that was just trying to get everything to kind of like line up. Of course, you could have his weapon in his chest there to hold it in place in stone form. This is one of those figures where you're probably not going to display him in this mode. And it's very obviously a figure under there, right? So, of course, I just happen to have the original vintage toy here. And we'll compare the rock forms here first. And first thing you might notice is he's a lot more blue in this form than he is in that one. They did a lot more paint apps on this guy back in the day. And I think actually the paint apps look really much nicer there. Obviously, as you can see where his gun's there, I didn't put the one in place on the new figure because, you know, I was kind of lazy. But this is kind of how they look when they're together. And while you can't really call this seamless here, per se, it definitely goes together a bit better than the new one. And of course, transformation basically works the same, where you just kind of like rise him up. And he has a better stance than the new one does. Now, they did keep up with the metallic paint on the inside of... Let's go put this in place real quick, just for the heck of it. They did keep up with like the metallic paint inside, like they did with the original toy, so that turns out pretty nicely. The face actually seems to be a bit smaller on the new one. But yeah, neither one of them is particularly detailed in a good way. Quick look at how the gun design changed too. Honestly, I think this is just a reuse of Rock-On's gun. But yeah, so we do have like a lot of the same internal details here, where we have like almost mechanical parts on the inside. And of course, because of the way the toy was designed, he held the gun from the side in his original toy. Whereupon, you know, again, he can hold his like normal-ish. But you still have to bend stuff into weird positions to get it to work. But yeah, they kept most of the detail in there from the old toy. Maybe added some additional bits here and there. So overall in this figure, as far as the update goes, he's kind of like Rock-On. He's a decent update for what they're trying to do here. They tried to give us the actual action feature with this one, which they did. It doesn't work out quite as nicely as we would probably like, but it's still better than not having it at all. And let's not forget that in Classics, you had to just attach a bunch of parts to it and bend them over at the waist in order to kind of get that same transformation. So this is definitely an upgrade from that. It is kind of too bad that they didn't give us the chromed dish on the gun. I kind of wish they would have done that because that does look nicer. And then, of course, there's just the paint apps on the stone formation. I'm not sure why they decided not to coat the Origins one as much as they did the Vintage one, but maybe it's got more to do with the fact that they don't think people are going to really transform them into stone form anyway for display and just keep them in robot mode, so nobody's really going to see that. It is still kind of a shame, and I kind of would have liked to have seen more of that blue instead of all that gray. I'm glad they kept with the metallic paint for the gold though, because that would have been really disappointing if they hadn't. Granted, they did Rock-On with the silver paint too, so they are keeping up with their metallic paint apps, I guess. Hopefully we'll see Grenetta, if I'm pronouncing her name right, but I honestly wouldn't expect that because that would be a whole new buck again for the body and the arms. And considering that the Vintage collection is pretty close to being at the end as far as figures go, it is a shame that we haven't seen more vehicles, but people aren't buying the vehicles when they are available. Still want a full battle ram though. But overall with this guy, they definitely accomplished what they were trying to do with him. There are some things that could have been done better, mostly the paint apps, and I would have liked a better job on the face, or even if you just, you know, put in the whites of the eyes the way they could have been, that would have been fine too. I am surprised to find out that apparently the other two are his kids, but I guess maybe that's covered in that comic also that came out back in the 80s. As I mentioned before, for a brief period of time, they were selling a complete newspaper strip book. I think it sold out really quick and they didn't really do any additional printings, if I remember correctly. I do have it somewhere in my collection, but my collection of books is packed away far, far deep into other stuff, and I never got to read it. But why don't you guys let me know what you think about these figures in the comments below? Did you order them? Were you excited about this? Getting closer and closer to finishing off that Vintage line. But if you enjoyed this review, please feel free to blast that like button. And if you want to hear more of my nonsense in the future, you can subscribe. I thank you for watching. Peace and love.